Hi, welcome to Ghostmasters 101, How to Break into the Business of Ghostwriting. This is a professional development course to help writers seize new opportunities to grow and diversify your career and your income. I'm Tony Rubino, and joining me for this introduction to the course is Dan Gerstein. Hey, Dan.
Hi, Tony.
It's always great to see you, and thank you so
You
much.
as well?
Dan, for those of you who don't already know, is the founder and CEO of Gotham Ghostwriters, which is North America's premier ghostwriting agency. We have a network of 4,000 plus editorial specialists, and we offer authors, thinkers, and speakers the unparalleled ability to find the right writing partner for their priorities. And that's where you come in as writers. We meet so many writers who wonder if ghostwriting is going to be a good fit for them. And we put together this course for those of you who decide that it is. But in this introductory session, we want to help you to answer the question, is ghostwriting a good fit for me? So, Dan, tell us a little bit about what writers need to do to make the shift from writer to ghostwriter.
Well, the first thing I would say, Tony, is that I think what's driving so much interest is the opportunities that a lot of writers are hearing about from their friends and colleagues. Demand for accomplished professional writers is exploding at the moment, in large part because of, I think, a convergence of forces. One is social media has turned everyone into an author and publisher. And the ability to get your story out there and get response from it. You get 100 likes and suddenly you think, I'm going to write a memoir. Or I have, an expertise that people will benefit from. And I don't say that in any way to disparage that. It's just the reality that it's, the gatekeeping in storytelling and communications has been cracked wide open. And publishing and storytelling has been completely democratized. And I think overall that's a great thing. And I think it's a very good thing for professional writers because a lot of the people who want to tell their stories and share their ideas and expertise aren't good at explaining themselves, articulating their ideas, and showcasing their thought leadership. And they're looking for help. And we see this all the time now. And then I was going to say that the second thing is just the downsizing and dismantling of the news media and journalism and all these other industries that employed professional writers for a long time and allowed them to, make a living and make a career from their skills and expertise as writers, right? So you add those two things together, you're seeing we're seeing so much interest among writers who are former journalists, are authors themselves, copywriters, in saying, there's an opportunity here to take my skill set and my expertise to both diversify my professional life, either add another stream of income or replace a stream of income. And we're seeing this through, and you and I have talked about this, writers coming to us on a regular basis say, how do I break into ghostwriting? I want to learn about this. I've heard so much about it. I've heard you can make a lot of money. I've heard there's all kinds of opportunities. And that really was, in large respect, what inspired us to create this course, which we hope will be the first in a series. But for people to make that leap and decide that this is an opportunity worth seizing, I think it's really important that they ask themselves some basic questions. Mm-hmm. And I think first and foremost, particularly for former journalists, is are they comfortable making that shift where their name isn't on their byline is not there, their name is not on the story, and you are there as a service provider. And I think that is, something that I think a lot of people really underappreciate when they start branching into ghostwriting or collaborative writing. Part of that shift is recognizing it's not just no longer your name or identity that's associated with the writing, and that you're helping someone else, but you are a service provider, right? You're going to get paid by someone else to help them tell their story and put their ideas out there. And again, nothing wrong with that at all. It's an incredibly rewarding field, but it requires not just you to sublimate your ego, but to present yourself as a proprietor of a small business, right? You have to start thinking like you are running a small business. And for a lot of writers, that's something they're just not prepared for. And again, it's many of our colleagues have made this shift successfully. It's not that it's that hard to overcome. You have to be prepared for it, and you have to accept that part of that also means that you're no longer submitting as a freelancer articles for someone else to publish under your own name, right? In terms of the basic mechanics of the business. You are trying to convince people to hire you and part with their money to buy your services. And that requires, particularly at the beginning, you have to put yourself out there. You have to market yourself. You have to make people aware of what you're good at and why they should hire you, right? A lot of the basic building blocks of, starting a business or a practice. And again, there's not a lot out there that helps people prepare for that. So I would say the most important question you ask yourself is, do you want to be in that position where you're trying to convince other people to hire you, right? And to embrace that role and to a certain degree identity as a service provider. And if you're not, then probably ghostwriting whether it's you're full on embracing that as your profession, working towards that, or just as another part of your professional writing portfolio. And that's where I would start.
Yeah, well, thank you. You covered a lot of ground there. When I started ghostwriting, well, first of all, I didn't know it was a profession. Someone just came to me and said, "Hey, you were a journalist and you've worked in PR. Can you write this book?" And I heard myself say yes. So have you no idea what I was doing? And I actually wrote 5 books before I ever met another ghostwriter. So that's how isolated and siloed this profession used to be. And now here we are with conventions, the Gathering of the Ghosts that Gotham Ghostwriters hosted, which was fabulous. And this course where people can come and learn the craft. And that's the other thing that I'm excited about. People who are already professional writers, we're not here to teach you how to write. You already know that. We're teaching you how to set up the business of writing. And part of that is the mind shift that Dan talked about, and I started out as a journalist. So, am I okay with my byline not being there? And then in today's world, a lot of ghosts are getting credits as, co-authors and collaborators, and at least mentioned it in the acknowledgement. So, it's not as anonymous as it was many moons ago when I started out. But Dan, what about character traits? Do you notice any character traits or personality types or anything like that that might make somebody say, yes, that sounds like me, or, oh my gosh, that's not what I want to do?
Yeah, I think that is another big threshold question for writers who have already established themselves as professional writers and are looking to either diversify or, really embrace that identity as a ghostwriter. I use the word sublimating your ego to put a finer point on that and be more specific, is just being comfortable letting go, right? That ultimately you're there to help your principal, the person you're collaborating with, tell their story in the best version of their voice. And the best ghostwriters are persuasive and very effective at helping their principals go into territory they may not be initially comfortable with, or tell stories they may not ultimately want to. But at the end of the day, it's their story. They're hiring you to tell the story ultimately the way they want. And you have to be prepared for that. And if you can't let go, right, and you're too protective of your darlings, then again, ghostwriting is probably not the right field for you. The other trait I would say is that, and again, I think, it's interesting because on the one hand, the role of a ghostwriter is very different than a journalist. And again, that whole idea of like you're a service provider and you have to kind of go through that mindset shift. However, a lot of the skills that make journalists successful very much apply to ghostwriting, right? And being able to be an effective interviewer with different people, make them comfortable with you, make them go to a place where they're vulnerable, right? That's a really important trait to being a successful ghostwriter. And a lot of journalists are really developed a lot of expertise and skill in that. And I think that transfers over. Also, I would say that, being able to work with different personality types and recognizing that, a lot of the work that ghostwriters do extends far beyond the actual writing, right? We talk about the ghostwriter as, diplomats, as therapist. There's so much that in that interpersonal relationship that you have to deal with that, again, a lot of great writers are introverts. Being an introvert doesn't mean you can't be a successful ghostwriter. But if you're uncomfortable engaging with people, and you have the idea of the craft of writing as I go in my writing zone and I write, that often doesn't, not often, that really won't work in ghostwriting because you're there as a collaborator, a thought partner, a writing partner, but also, someone who has to win the trust and confidence of the person you're working with.
Yeah, that's a great segue. That's actually one of the modules, as you know, winning the confidence game. I find, and so many of my colleagues who will be joining me in teaching this course, once the client trusts us, both trusts us in two ways. One, they understand that we really know what we're doing and that we are an expert at putting together great books. And then secondary, but more important in many ways, is knowing that they can trust us as another human, one-on-one, that we have their back, that we're listening, that we're really paying attention, and that we do, in fact, care about what they're saying and how they're coming across in the book. And the most experienced ghostwriters, will have the comfort level to say to a client, geez, I'm glad I know that because it's going to help me to help you to write this book, but maybe let's not put that story in without.
That's right.
What about the ghosts who are like at the top of the field? They're the ones who are making $500,000 on a book or, somewhere in that range. What might set them apart from ghosts who are making a really good living, but, not at that pinnacle?
It's a great question. I would say, first and foremost, we talk about in ghostwriting a lot about, capturing the principal's voice, right? But I would say that the best ghostwriters go a step further and capture the author's mind, right? They know how they think. They have the unique ability to articulate the stories they want to tell and the ideas they want in a way, not just that the author couldn't do themselves, but end up being this paradoxical thing that exists somewhere in between the ghostwriter and the author. But at the same time, it's totally authentic to the author, right? At the end of the day, the author will look at it and sort of say, that's me. And I think that is a really rare and valuable ability that the best ghostwriters have, is at the end of the day, that it's a book that the author never could have developed on their own, but still it's the essence of them. And they're proud to have that book out in the world.
Yeah, and it's so satisfying as a ghostwriter to get to be the person who helps someone do that. Because, we work with so many brilliant people and they're experts in their field and they're, the best in the world in many cases, and we get to pick their brains and learn from them. But that doesn't mean they're the best writers. So yes, we want to capture their authentic voice, but we also want to elevate certain things about their personalities. And that is the best compliment. I had one of my clients once say to me, oh my gosh, you wrote a joke for me that I would have said. So, you become very close to your clients. I end up becoming friends with most of my clients at some point or after the job, but I mean, that's not everyone's path. But we do have a very sort of intimate relationship with our clients. And one of the things that I'll frequently say is it takes about 9 months to write a book, and same to have a baby. And so ghostwriting is sort of like having a baby without the sex with someone else. So, it is that intimate sometimes on an emotional level. And we do hear people's secrets and we keep them. If we're smart and we want to stay in business, lips are zipped. Yeah, so let's get into that. How are some ways that you've seen ghostwriters really gain the trust of their clients? Because you do a lot of matchmaking, with not you personally anymore, but at Gotham, you are constantly putting together matches of clients with ghosts who you know will be a pretty good fit. How do you know that?
It's a great question. And I would link it back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of the traits that make people cut out for ghostwriting or successful. You talked a little bit about this, the reward you get for helping someone, right? And I think if you gain satisfaction from using your abilities as a writer, as an interviewer or storyteller, to help someone take what's inside them and get it out into the world, and that gives you satisfaction, then that's going to position you well to succeed as a ghostwriter. Also, it's going to help you win the trust of your clients, right? Because I think what we've seen over and over again when we're doing a search and trying to pair a writer with an author is the author doesn't want a paid mercenary. This is often their life's work, their life story. It's incredibly valuable to them, but also it can be intimidating and unsettling to go through this process, not just opening yourself up, but then having it to go out into the world, and you're staking your reputation on this book in many respects. And they want to know, I think, first and foremost, that their writing partner is someone they can rely on through the ups and downs of that birthing process. But it's also invested in their success. I use that term a lot. Right? Is that they're not just doing it for a paycheck, and they're committed to the process, and they're committed to the venture, this partnership that you're forming that's going to, in certain respects, be out there for posterity and outlive you, not just the relationship, but you as human beings.
It's true. And that is when, to use the cliche, the magic happens. When you really have that rapport. I'll sometimes have somebody say to me, "You get me. Like, I know that you see me and you know what's important to me." And that has to be real. You have to really do that. But when I am deciding on, do I want to accept a ghostwriting job, there are questions that all of us in the business ask ourselves, and they're along the lines of, is this a topic I would love to learn more about, and that I want to spend the next many months really reading about and interviewing people about, and becoming sort of a little bit of an expert at this myself. And then the next question I ask is, am I the best writer for this book? Because different ghosts are better for different books. And so if I don't believe that I have the right skill sets, background, experience, I'll send it over to Gotham and let you guys find the right writer for the book. And then the third question I ask is, do I have respect for this author? Can I develop an authentically respectful relationship with them? That doesn't mean I have to like them or love them or, in fact, want to be their friend at some point. But I have to have a certain amount of respect for them. And so these are questions that we ask at the beginning to make sure we don't get in trouble down the road. And these are the kind of things I wish I would have known, when I started out in this business. Dan, one of the questions I get a lot, making a little bit of a segue here, is, where do I find clients? People say, I think I know how to write a book, or I could maybe take a class about craft, but once I decide I want to be a ghostwriter, then, where do these clients come from?
Well, that is the central challenge of our industry is the work we do is hidden from public eye, and outside of our agency and a couple other competitors, most ghostwriters work individually. The most common ways that people find ghostwriters, I like to joke, is they either Google a writer or phone a friend. And authors typically aren't put out RFPs, right? So if you work as a journalist and you're familiar with the PR industry, when American Express needs a new PR firm, they put out an RFP, and a lot of the big firms get that and they respond. And, there's an infrastructure and there's a pipeline. With ghostwriting, none of that exists. And this goes to back to the fundamental question we started with about, this profession or field a good fit for you? Is this something you're gonna potentially be able to thrive in? Are you prepared, especially in the early stages, right, to hustle, right, and to have your skin thick enough that you can deal with, getting passed over, or people not taking your phone calls. Again, that's not for everyone, right? And it's kind of like your mini version of an entrepreneur. Again, for a lot of people who've had a stable job and a stable paycheck for years, that can be a rough transition. And again, I'm not trying to talk you out of it. It's just that you have to be prepared for that. I will say, and we're going to definitely expand on this in the course, but one trick that's worked for a lot of writers in both kind of testing the waters and establishing a little bit of a portfolio to credential yourself as a ghostwriter as you're making this transition, is to go to people who have an interesting story and say, I think your story would make for a great book, and I'd love to help you with that. Very few people would get upset or offended if, a writer they know and respect comes to them and says, your story is worthwhile. You're starting off on a very positive note. And I think that is a really particularly good strategy for journalists who are trying to transition to ghostwriting, because they've interviewed lots and lots of people over the years. And if you've talked to them and written about them in one context, and then go back to them to say, listen, I think you have a great book in with you, and I'd love to partner with you on that. I've heard over and over again of success stories where that is the pivot point for a journalist to cross over to being a collaborator, is they start with that first book with a subject they've written about in the past. That's
a great tip. And that's true. And it's especially true for those of us who've been in the business for a while, where there was no Gotham ghostwriters, 20 some years ago. And that's how I got my very first book project. I met someone on a flight, and they were talking about wanting to write a book. And I followed up and said, what are you thinking about that book? I would love to participate. She said, great. It turned out she had just had a meeting with some editors at a magazine that she worked for, and they were telling her they wanted her to write a book. So she said, will you write my book? I said, yes. And, we were off and running. And then the second book I did was for someone in her network. So my first two books, which is often the case, come from our network. And then we have that platform to stand on. And we will get into that in the course, in the Cultivating Clients module. So I know I've taken up a lot of your time today. I want to just go through a little bit for the people who think they might be interested, tell you briefly what the modules are. We're going to talk about how to make your business plan, how to build your infrastructure, how to be a visible ghost, so you're really out there and people can start finding you, how to cultivate clients, how to close the deal. And then in phase 2 modules, we're going to talk about how to win the confidence game, know thy client, which is super important, design a smooth process, helping your clients to figure out what the right publishing path is, and then just a little bit of craft, because it's essential to get more work in this business, how to write a book proposal that they can't refuse. Dan, is there anything you want to say briefly about any of those topics before we wrap up today?
Well, yeah, a couple things. I would say that in certain respects, we're in a Dickensian Tale of Two Cities world when it comes to ghostwriting. It's the best of times, worst of times. The best of times is there's a lot of demand and a lot of opportunity. There are a lot of high-paying gigs out there, and I am bullish about the marketplace, generally speaking. The worst of times aspect of it is a lot of people are recognizing it's the best of times, and a lot of writers are rushing into the field, and not just in the US, all over the world. That means it's getting incredibly crowded marketplace and very, very competitive. Part of what we're going to talk about in the course, and it's something that I think, again, if you're thinking about to make this shift, is anticipating, right, that this is a very competitive marketplace. And how do you stand out? How do you differentiate yourself, right? Because there's limits, in certain fields you can compete on price, certain fields you can compete on, your productivity. You can do more for less. Those options really aren't that much available to you when it comes to ghostwriting, right? So you have to figure out, okay, how can I convince a certain class of authors that I'm the best partner for them? And that's central to launching and growing a successful ghostwriting practice, is figuring out where do you fit into this ecosystem and how you can convince a certain class of authors that you're the best partner for them, just like you had said, Tony. The second thing I would say is, if you are an established ghostwriter and you're in demand and you're primarily working with authors who are going to get traditionally published and get book deals and they're working through agents, you can really specialize in just being the ghostwriter and just, being the writing partner. But for a lot of ghostwriters today, even very well-paid, successful ones who are working with a different universe of authors, many of whom are bypassing traditional publishing, you're not just the ghostwriter. You are a partner in a pop-up business, which is, the writing, production, distribution, and marketing of a book, which is often a platform for the author. And more, what ghostwriters are being asked to do, and the best ones are thriving at, is recognizing that their work as an advisor and guiding and a Sherpa through the publishing process, it makes them that more valuable to their authors, right? So a big part of today of being a successful ghostwriter is staying current on the evolution of the publishing marketplace, an understanding of the differences between do-it-yourself independent self-publishing versus premium hybrid publishing, as an example, and being in a position to help your author find the right path for the book once you're done writing. That's, again, one of the things that we're going to definitely focus on in this course. Again, it all tied to the goal of helping writers launch and grow a successful ghostwriting practice.
Well, we covered a lot of ground. I think we've given you a lot to think about. And if we haven't scared you, and I hope we haven't, we would love to have you join us for Ghostmasters 101, how to break into the business of ghostwriting. And you'll be seeing Dan again, along with other wonderful ghostwriters who have a ton of experience. And Dan, anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, that if you feel like that what we've said about the opportunities in ghostwriting still resonate with you, and it's something you want to pursue, we really feel this course will have a lot of practical, concrete advice and insights to help you seize those opportunities. And I think one of the big distinguishing factors is, first off, there aren't almost any courses out there or educational platforms focused on the business of ghostwriting. And I think that's a vacuum and something that's missing in the marketplace that we're trying to fill. But even more importantly, we're going to bring together some of the best experts in the country as instructors to join us, speaking to different facets of launching and growing a ghostwriting practice. So you're going to benefit from a diverse group of viewpoints and experiences that you're not going to be able to find anywhere else. And we're really proud of that. And we're excited to go on this journey with you and look forward to having more conversations.
Absolutely. Come see us at GothamGhostwriters.com. Register for the course, and we will help you to learn what you need to learn to be successful.